Hi, everyone. In this lecture, we're going to discuss the purpose and functions in art. I'm going to share screen with you really quick, and we'll go ahead and get started on that. Okay. So you should be able to find this lecture in your modules, but you can, of course, pause. You can back up, take your notes, whatever you need to do. That's the benefits of having it recorded for you and in YouTube. Um, but I'm just trying to shrink a few little things so I can see my screen better. Okay, there we go. All right, so purpose and functions of art, you're going to need to know for your exams. So this isn't going away. Please make sure that you're aware of all 6 of these. Daily use, visual delight, communicating information, public and personal expression, art for the spirit, and political purpose. Okay, now they're called different things, and I've called them different things myself throughout the many, many years, but I'll explain as we go. But to summarize, this is pretty much the 6 that are going to align for our course. Now, art can inspire, inform, persuade, entertain, transform, deceive, humiliate, and anger you. And that's going to happen throughout this course as well. You know, as you're looking at these artworks and you're learning some of the content, it can strike up some very strong emotional reactions. But just keep in mind, you know, that uh, you don't have to like it, right? You don't have to love it. That's not what this course is about. This course is about you learning about the potential of the work and seeing how it can communicate. And in this particular topic, the purpose and the function of art can give us an indication of what the artist was thinking, right? So it's going to also trigger our imagination and, of course, our different senses and those emotions as well, right? So let me see, I can't get it to move. There we go. All right. So we're going to be evaluating all throughout the semester, and we're going to get a lecture that's going to delve a little bit more intense about how to go about evaluating in this first unit, but it's going to be peppered throughout these lectures leading up to that main one that we need to identify with a few more terms. But when you're evaluating artwork, when you're looking at it, what you're thinking about is kind of personal in regards to your biased experiences in life. So let's say, for example, you know, you're looking at a picture of chocolate ice cream, but you've never had chocolate in your life. You are going to have a difficult time having a kind of connection to that. I mean, it's like you're looking at it, but you really haven't experienced it. And so therefore you can't really taste it in your imagination, right? But when we're evaluating artwork, it triggers things like that in us, you know, based on our own biased experiences. But really, uh, we need to try to evaluate what art is saying to us, what the artist is trying to say to us. And there's different things that we refer to as visual literacy terminology, and that's going to also unfold throughout this semester as well, where it'll be very common knowledge for us. And I'll see that in your writing, right? But we question when we look at something, first off, is it visually interesting? Does it inform us? Does it move us, you know, emotionally or intellectually or spiritually? And then, of course, we're looking at the skill. You know, we have time to kind of hang out with it and see, you know, the optical illusion that is causing this reaction with us, right? But what's kind of cool about our individuality is that the type of art that we prefer to really does tell us more about ourselves than our favorite ice cream, you know, chocolate, strawberry, vanilla, whatever, right? the kind of art that you collect, things that you're drawn to. Like if you like cats, then maybe you're going to be drawn to paintings of cats and sculptures of cats, right? Now, by looking at this work, our first reaction is that the artist lacks skill. Now, the context upon which this artwork was created in 1976, uh, it was valued at a different caliber than how we see arts maybe today, or how it would have been seen 400 years ago, right? So in 1976, you had the feminist movement that was going strong. You had a certain kind of color palette that was being used in people's homes, a lot of like green and gold shag carpets, right? It was just a different time. And the feminist movement and female artists were becoming more acceptable into the world of art. But this work isn't so much about having it look realistic in regards to every fine detail like a photograph. Okay, but the eyebrows narrow, creating issues with this kind of positive negative space. We're not even sure if it's the left eye or the right eye. The cheek is splotchy, right? And so when we look at this work in 1976, Shy Glance, compared to Viggy Lebrun's self-portrait of 1782, most people are going to say that this work is better, that the skill level of the artist it is much more advanced. But in the world of art, you guys, this is what's kind of strange, is that in the context upon which these were created, each one had its role to play out with audience based on the preference of the day, the ideas of the day, the philosophies of the day, the latest innovations of technology. And when I say that, I'm talking about paint, um, paint formulas. So we'll talk more about that later on in the semester, but we are talking about chemistry, and the way that the eye looks at things, and so that also means physics. And of course, we're talking about the skill level and how the eye, the mind, and the hand all work together, and the psychology of how we look and identify with things like a feather. You know what a feather feels like because you've probably experienced it somewhere in your lifetime. So looking at the feather on this hat, you can say, hey, feather, and you feel it and you know that it's soft, right? So in this case, with Elizabeth Viggy Lebrun, she gives us a more natural light, the use of color along with other elements and principles, which we'll discuss later on, things like texture and atmospheric perspective and unity, balance, and those things, okay, including proportions. They're all played out here. And so we're being affected by what the artist is giving us. We are evaluating it based on our own biased experiences. But in the world of art, this art in 1782 is no more important or less important than this work that we see here with Shy Glance of 1976. It's a different time, different taste, different preference, and use of the technologies. So we automatically criticize. We place discriminating judgments on everything because that's a survival trait that we have, right? And so it can be favorable, it can be unfavorable. So when we're looking at this artwork, though, if you don't understand the visual literacy, you don't understand how to talk about it, or how to interpret it, it can be extremely overwhelming. When you just summarize it like what we see here in this illustration, big crazy paintings, nice country scenes, right? So when your first impression, the look upon something, and you get a certain feeling to it, go with it, see what happens. See if an artist statement changes your mind. See if, if you hang out with it for a while, if you see something different. Now, let's talk about these functions, okay, these purpose and functions. The first one to discuss is the art of daily use. Okay, so those are your personal daily use objects that actually brings pleasure into our lives. And a perfect example is your digital devices. You know, your cell phone looks a certain way, you know, in your hand, but also the color choices, like let's say your phone case, right? Or your stylus or your computer. I mean, there's just certain things that you like, right? That's art for daily use. Somebody has designed those things for you to house the technologies of those computer chips and keyboards and things like that, right? But artists transform objects in one or both ways, as what we see here, to be seen in a new way and or a kind of creative embellishment. And so let's look at a couple of examples of these for daily use, right? Here we have Eva Zeisel. This is soft spoke with ladle. It is ceramic. It's actually called earthenware. We'll talk about later on. You know, it's nice to look at. It's a really cool looking design, right? It's better than just a very simple, boring kind of soft spoke. Or yeah, it's like cool looking, right? Versus, you know, over here when we see Frank Lloyd Wright's house. So we're also including architecture. This is actually called the Hollyhock House. They're in Los Angeles. Oh, sorry, I misspelled Los Angeles. But we have a kind of embellishment on the columns, but also the way that we see these circles there for the pool, but all of these repeated patterns, right, that we can see the steps, the way that it's all laid out seems to be a kind of embellishment. Now, art for visual delight. Art for visual delight, there's a kind of idealism. And so we're basically talking about the idealist style. So something that we're used to. We've accepted it as beauty. So something that it makes us uncomfortable at first. It's hard for us to buy into, right? But it's kind of like keeping up with the Jones. You know, it's like that's accepted as art. So I'm comfortable with that. Going to Hobby Lobby or Michael's and purchasing something that's acceptable as art. Sometimes it's hard for artists that are pushing those boundaries, you know, because they don't fit into this idealistic kind of style because they are pushing those boundaries that make people uncomfortable, right? But it still gives us visual delight to see these changes. So I don't want to make it sound like, you know, it's only that has idealism and what's already been accepted. No, okay, but that's usually you know, the first thing of visual delight. A bowl of fruit looks like a bowl of fruit, and you're okay with it looking like a bowl of fruit, right? Also, harmony. So when we're talking about harmony, we're talking about things that have balance, that are harmonious proportions. Okay, they for some reason make us enjoy what it is we're looking at and this notion of beauty. And we're going to come back to that in just a moment. But let's talk about the aesthetics, okay? Because we need to talk about this notion of what is considered beautiful, something that is evoking this responsiveness. So the aesthetics addresses this. Okay, this is a vocabulary word you need to know for your test. It's a branch of philosophy concerned with the feelings aroused in us by sensory experiences. And that includes sight, hearing, taste, touch, smell. And it concerns itself with our responses to the natural world and to the world we make. So really what it addresses is not just the question of what is art, but really how does the art affect us and why? It's an intellectual stimulation that you have, touching it, smelling it, experiencing it, right? We've done this since we were babies, you know, and you pick up things, you put it in your mouth or you smell it, you taste it, those things, right? Now, we often use the aesthetics, you know, we often talk about it being having good taste, right? It's equated to having taste. whether it's good or bad, right? But artists challenge the established conventions of good taste. So again, that's why it doesn't always fit into what is considered ideal, because it pushes those boundaries. But today, we oftentimes use the words beautiful to refer to things that really are simply pretty. And so, pretty means pleasing to the eye, yet beautiful means having qualities of higher order. And usually, it has an intellectual or stimulates a moral sense. So imagine dating, a young lady and you were saying, "Hey, you're so pretty." Is she gonna like that? Hmm. She's gonna want to hear, "Oh, I'm beautiful." And the reason why is because we do hold it to a higher standard. Again, because it does engage the intellect and, of course, moral sense. Now, there's a philosopher I'm going to want you to remember. His name is Immanuel Kant. Okay. Now, he was a philosopher. Sorry, I need to change that where it says philosophy. I'll change that in the notes before I get this posted. But he was a philosopher, and his philosophy was discussing the notion of beauty. He had some other things that he discussed too, but it's this that I really want to focus about for him. He stated that in order for an object to be truly beautiful, this highest state has intellectual response that we have that gives us pleasure, um, it simply must have a disinterest to it without any biased opinion. Okay, so the minute that somebody says this is beautiful, they're claiming it because of how they respond to it, but they don't have the right to look at you and judge you and state whether or not you are pretty or beautiful or whatever, because Immanuel Kant is already stating that the fact that you already exist without any biased opinion, without any kind of judgment placed on you, you are already at the state of beauty. And to claim it, if somebody comes along and claims it, it really diminishes the true notion of being beautiful. So I want you to think about that. I see so many people today with their self-esteems, and it it's really sad that we oftentimes forget how beautifully designed we are, already created. You know, if you're here, you're breathing, nature doesn't make that kind of mistake, right? And whether you are a religious person or if you're not a religious person, you have to remember, the fact that your body pumps all this blood um, and you digest food and you have these sensory perceptions that you can experience, this world, that is the beautiful state without anybody judging you at all. So it doesn't matter person next to you or the person, in the other room or the person that you got a crush on, you are already exactly how you were meant to be, and that is beautiful. And I do want to stress that it's so important that you guys always remember that. But sometimes to see beauty though in art, one must look past the subject and find either the meaning or the formal qualities. Okay, because again, this being art class, and although you are an amazing work of art already, we need to bring it back down here to actually talking about these physical, tangible manifestations of ideas, right? These objects that these artists are creating that sometimes may not be viewed as stimulating intellectually or with those moral senses. Take, for example, right here, Leonardo da Vinci's A Man Tricked by Gypsies. Nobody's going to look at that and just automatically go, "Oh, that's so beautiful. They're so handsome. These are gorgeous people," right? We have to look past that subject. Maybe it's about the marks. Maybe it is the representation or the way that Da Vinci was able to capture a kind of caricature of these individuals or the aging process. I mean, there's something about these individuals that we can read into them and we can get a sense of their personalities. So whether the subject matter itself is pleasing or displeasing, hard to look at or easy for your eyes to take in, it doesn't matter in this particular class. And whenever you are trying to evaluate artwork, um, right? So sometimes, again, it is something else even than what is presented before you, because you're already biased with your life experiences. And some of you guys have an extremely active imagination, right? And that imagination, again, it's so beautifully unique. And I say that we're beautifully unique, for each and every one of us, right? Because in some, it is an instrument of transformation. So it's like trying to force everybody to like chocolate pie and somebody over here likes apple pie, right? Your imagination's the same way. Your imaginations, you can have an idea, but it's never the same, right? And that, of course, takes you beyond, somebody else's ideas, of what something should be or the deeper meaning of it. So this transformation within itself, the experience that you're having can also be a kind of beautiful experience, right? And sometimes that transformation can make the artist's work mean something for you. And sometimes it means more than what the artist intends, and sometimes it's not quite what that artist meant for you. But your imagination is what often is filling in the gaps for the artist, right? So we represent the world then because we see ourselves reflected there. So in nature, we see something of our own interest and habits of mind. Now, take for example, if anyone who's ever fallen in love, okay, those are very real feelings, very hard to make a tangible object, right? Because that transcends the material reality of the outside world. It's not something you can go buy off the shelf, right? It's not something you can hold in your hand. So, again, your imagination also allows for you to create things that represent the immaterial and give material form. Again, the very definition of art using a medium, right? So let's say, for example, Pablo Picasso, okay, this is state of his imagination. Okay, now this is a portrait of Gertrude Stein, and was painted in 1906. Now, after about 80 sittings, Picasso, he was pretty frustrated. He couldn't capture what he wanted to. He'd been studying African art, particularly masks, and she goes away, and he then uh, paints this portrait, and he's completely satisfied with the color choices, the way that she's depicted, and so forth. His imagination filled in the gaps for him, and he felt content with it. So, imagination of this kind is necessarily subjective. Okay, so that feeling, that emotion, not objective as it regards to it being a formal, looking exactly like a photo, but more of an expression and a feeling, right? So that is, it exists in the mind of the artist or in the artist's culture, not in the world as we know it, right? So he helps us see something a little bit different. Now we have James Abbott McNeill Whistler with Nocturne Blue and Gold. We'll actually revisit this later on when we start talking about color theory. But there are variations of blue in the sky and the water that are against the city light, and they're suppressed details in the scene to yield a balance of shapes and transform the humdrum zone of London into a quietly poetic moment, right? I mean, just getting lost in that artwork, that atmosphere, right? Or the sounds of the fireworks that we see in the distance, the trickling of the water. Then we move on to this work right here. And there's a decoration of useful objects. that can bring joy, visual delight to us. Now, this work right here actually serves multiple functions because we have the decorative use of it, right? But when the person, the owner of this, passed away, in the membrane culture, they put a hole in the middle of it and lay it over the top of the deceased person's head. And the hole in the bowl lets the spirit depart upward. So the hole symbolizes the end of its useful life. So we have something that's decorative, right? Visual delight, but then it also crossed over into another purpose. And that oftentimes can happen with art, is that it doesn't just serve in one category. Sometimes it can have multiple functions. Now, this work right here, using our imagination, tells a story. And in class, I oftentimes have people, unfold the story for me. I've heard so many amazing different variations of this from, oh, somebody got caught cheating with their game of limes, after a night of partying and got shot at, to people saying, oh, it was a party and they were shooting it at the table for target practice. I've heard all sorts of things, that it's morning time, afternoon, it's early evening, summer. But if you look close enough, you can actually see that there's drops of blood, there's bullet holes. We think it's outside because of these particular types of chairs and the reflections that we see here in these bottles. One over here isn't completely drank yet, but and we have an empty plate, that's probably where the lines were. But again, I hear all sorts of different stories, but the viewers can easily imagine that there were two players seated at the table. And the artist shows as a way of being open to an everyday event, but that it can also be visual delight. Now, communicating information is number 3. When we're talking about communicating information, we can talk about storytelling in regards to it being personal, moral, or historical, and also commentary. And commentary, communication oftentimes is between the artist and the audience. And those subjects can vary. They can, again, bridge over into these different purpose and functions quite easily. Now, history provides the best evidence of our need for the arts. And I don't want to read through all of this. I just kind of want to summarize for you that artists sometimes can scare people. Now, if you ever want to get rid of a culture's way of life, do away with their arts, do away with their music, their visuals, their literary works, because that is a reflection of their culture. And the victor, oftentimes, the conqueror, they'll get rid of everything about that. So they become acclimated into their way of life and their beliefs and stuff like that. But Socrates was scared also in, we're talking about in the ancient world. He's a philosopher. He argued that painters had too much power. They scared people. Didn't fit into his ideal republic because it caused too many emotional reactions. Art can scare people because it can be thought-provoking. It can change your mind on previous viewpoints, right? So artists of all kinds oftentimes are the first to be controlled or even silenced because of that. They have a way of bridging beyond maybe writings, language barriers. But if you see an image, you definitely can kind of get an idea of what the artist is trying to say or how they are sympathetic towards a particular kind of viewpoint. Right? So art can be kind of scary for people, as what we see here with Francisco Goya, The Disasters of War, number 18. We have these bodies that are laid out, the horrors of war. And nobody I know has ever said, "Oh, yay, great, it's wartime, let's go." No, But this expresses the outrage at the uh, war against the French against Spain. With Napoleon, they stationed some troops, and there were some really bad things that happened in Spain. And of course, after everything starts to settle, the dust starts to settle, people don't want to talk about the horrors of it. And Francisco Goya said, I don't think so. He's trying to get everyone to be aware, right? So artists can criticize, they can influence values and public opinion through their work. And so these are getting mass produced. This is a print that was being circulated. So people really understood, that this is not fun and games. You're hearing from afar, but this needs to stop. This is his famous painting, the 3rd of May of 1808. Again, we get the view from Francisco Goya that he is sympathetic to those that lost their lives. He has the man with his arms stretched out as if he is being crucified in the position of vulnerability, his torso opened up. At his feet, we see these bodies that obviously went before him. And the jagged edges, that we see here of the hats, the way that the Napoleon troops are set up, and the pointy knife-like guns. I think they're called beret. I forget what kind of guns those are. But yeah, one person over here doesn't want to watch what's about to happen. Another one looks very ill-fated over here. I mean, it was horrific. And this was a historical event that this little village, somebody got trigger happy after France had gone in there. They were stationed, and they were scared that there would be a revolt, and they decided to kill everybody, and they slaughtered everybody. And Goya is making sure that people never forget. Now, this one right here, artist commentaries often include personal judgments on conditions, facts, politics, etc. So yes, we're just looking at Goya's viewpoints, right? Quite sympathetic towards Spain, right? In this work right here, we don't know the artist, and the octopus personifies the Federal Reserve Bank. And this symbolizes the 2008 economic downturn. And if you look close enough, there's some symbols, some iconography, that's the study of symbols, that you guys might be familiar with today. We see some symbols here that maybe you see on the back of our dollar bills, right? Some people say that's the Illuminati. I mean, I don't know, right? But the federal bank looking like a monster, foreclosure, take power back, right? This rocket, we see the little Monopoly man. Obviously, somebody is not happy, right, with what has happened. But here we are talking about it. Graffiti artists are artists too, right? So number 4, art for public and personal expression. Just saw some graffiti art, but let's talk a little bit more about commemoration and self-expression as well too. We all have a profound need to remember and show respect for those who've gone before us. And some commemorations personal, as we hold memories of those people who were important in our lives, at a higher state, right? We want to do something special even though they're not here anymore. Commemoration is often a public act, though, and it's celebrating a significant person or event or honoring patriotic actions. So keep in mind always that commemorative art is public. Okay, so if we look here with Taj Mahal, I don't know if you've ever seen it, you've probably heard of the Taj Mahal. A lot of people will say, hey, that's a neat looking building, and they're not aware of the fact that this was a commemorative structure for the Jehan's favorite wife. This is her tomb. So this was definitely a testament to the romantic love and devotion that he felt towards his wife. And so we can see this gorgeous symmetry, beautiful white marbles. There's also some pinks and grays in there. But if you've never seen it, here it is, the Taj Mahal. Now, this work right here, this is a historical painting that commemorates the death of General Wolfe. Now, we could slice and dice this one up with elements and principles and go into the concepts and the historical events of what happened. But right now, I just want us to be aware of some of the commemorative works. Yes, this was the military battle of 1759 in which the British Army defeated the French General Wolfe, who, of course, died on the battlefield. Everything here points us towards this direction. Okay, and like I said, we'll get more into that in the semester, the way all of this works, the atmospheric perspective, the color choices that we see. So visual literacy terminology is coming, you guys, but again, this is just getting you guys understanding about commemorative works. So although that painting was done and probably housed more in an intimate space, viewed for public or to be viewed by public, there are other commemorative works such as this right here, Maya Lin's Vietnam Veterans Memorial, that is quite massive and all to see out in the public forum. So your homework assignment is asking you guys to write me an essay about this particular memorial. So I'm going to give you a little information about it, but I'm going to end this PowerPoint. I'm going to break this up in two parts so it doesn't seem as tedious and long, and I'll pick up with part 2 here with Maya Lin.